Okay, picture like the swinging 60s. In England, you got the Beatles, you got baby boomers, supersonic aircrafts. The Concorde was like this luxurious high speed plane embodying like optimism of the 20th century. So the British and the French government got together to build a supersonic transport plane. They're called SSTs, and supersonic planes travel faster than the speed of sound. So today, passenger planes are limited to flying at subsonic speeds that travel at 575 miles per hour. And a cruising altitude would be like between 31,000 and 38,000 feet today. Hypersonic planes were flying at 1,300 miles per hour. Freaking crazy. Over double the amount, and over double the amount of altitude as well. Sound. 60,000 feet in the air, like double what the cruising altitude of today's planes are. So instead of it taking 3 hours to go from New York to London on a hypersonic plane, now it takes 7 hours. So I remember reading an article about this, and it just blew my freaking mind. I mean, they were like serving lobster and lamb and champagne in the sky back in 1969. Hey everybody, this is another One Question Friday. You're here with me and Kenny, and as per usual, we are just going to run through an airline question, a travel question, something related to the travel industry. Kenny, you got anything for me?
All right, we have a really cool one for today. Someone writes in, Connor Ann, I saw an article about a flight that supposedly can get you from New York to London in 90 minutes. Wow. That's fast. That's even faster than the Concorde used to do it. Is hypersonic travel going to come in this decade? Is this real?
Yeah, I remember the Concorde was hypersonic travel, but I know that hasn't been around for like 20 years. I'm sure a bunch of different companies are working on hypersonic. Like, what is going on today with that? Do you know?
They claim to be working on a jet that would fly New York to London in 90 minutes. Now, obviously, this is incredibly fast. I believe that the Concorde, the fastest that the Concorde ever did it, I believe was 2 hours and 53 minutes, that's just fast. I mean, that's like,
freaking nuts. Yeah.
That's just, 2 hours and 50 minutes is like what it takes me to get to New York from Orlando-ish, do a little bit faster depending on the route.
Just a light nap. And you're there.
Just a suit. Yeah. You're getting up in the air, you're getting meal service, and then you're basically feet are on the ground. So there was a startup, or is a startup, that's working on this. I know that hypersonic and supersonic travel has been a desire to make a comeback ever since the Concorde got retired. Connor, do you know the background on what happened to the Concorde?
Yeah. Okay. Well, for starters, if someone listening doesn't even know what it is, okay, picture like the swinging 60s. In England, you got the Beatles, you got baby boomers, supersonic aircrafts. The Concorde was like this luxurious high speed plane embodying like optimism of the 20th century. So the British and the French government got together to build a supersonic transport plane. They're called SSTs, and supersonic planes travel faster than the speed of sound. So today, passenger planes are limited to flying at subsonic speeds that travel at 575 miles per hour. And a cruising altitude would be like between 31,000 and 38,000 feet today. Hypersonic planes were flying at 1,300 miles per hour. Freaking crazy. Over double the amount, and over double the amount of altitude as well. 60,000 feet in the air, like double what the cruising altitude of today's planes are. So instead of it taking 3 hours to go from New York to London on a hypersonic plane, now it takes 7 hours. So I remember reading an article about this, and it just blew my freaking mind. I mean, they were like serving lobster and lamb and champagne in the sky back in 1969. Like, how crazy is that? Like, we just ate French toast on our Delta flight the other day, and it felt like a new thing. And then you think in 1969, people are eating lobster in the sky. That's just crazy.
The Concorde took its first flight in 1969.
1969. And its last commercial flight was in 2003. So for 3 decades, people were flying from New York to London in just 3 hours. It's so crazy to think about. All the way back in time, people are just living this like luxurious, super modern experience. You know, it's kind of crazy to think that it was that early on in airline travel that they thought, hey, can we go this fast?
Yeah. So the question is this coming back? And I think that the answer is maybe. That's probably the truthful answer. The reason that the Concorde got retired was really twofold. Number one is they had a crash in 2000 that killed 109 people. And that kind of eroded public trust. And it got officially retired 3 years later.
Did you read up on like how it happened?
I did not.
Okay. So the plane was taking off in Paris. It hit a metal strip on the runway, which caused one of its tires to just explode, to blow out. And the debris from the tire blowout punctured the fuel tank. The whole thing went up in flames. It was like a 200-foot flame disaster. And then, yeah, like you said, all 109 people on board, including the crew and the passengers, died, and 4 people on the ground died too. So yeah, the crash, I mean, this was the whole reason this whole thing went kaput, or else we'd probably have, you know, planes that got you from Orlando to Singapore in like 4 hours or something. But the crash was a big deal. It was a real blow to the Concorde program. You know, they all had to ground Concorde planes right away. And there's a big investigation into what went wrong. So they found out the fuel tanks just weren't designed to withstand damage like that. And, it's pretty sad, but people were scared to fly after the crash. Understandably, I probably wouldn't have done it either. Yeah. And the Concorde program never recovered, which is super sad because it was a really cool plane, amazing engineering. But safety always comes first. And if you didn't know about this, like people listening to this who've never heard of this before, doesn't this just blow your mind? Like think about, like we didn't have cell phones, but we had planes that flew twice the
Mach
speed
2.
of sound.
Yeah, it's insane.
So crazy.
So supersonic flight has been around in the past. So can it happen again? Absolutely. The current big player that is working on this is Boom Supersonic. They have some kind of orders, whether it be pre-orders or deposits from American, United, and then there's some other people that are in the mix too. I think Japan put in a pre-order, or they're partnered with them, and then they're also partnered with a bunch of different aerospace companies. Now, with anything, the devil is in the details, especially when it comes to supersonic travel, and especially when it comes to manufacturing any machine that uses advanced technology and takes a long time to make. So Boom, Delta CEO was asked about this a ways back, and he responded with that there's more questions than answers, not specifically about Boom, but about hypersonic travel just as a reality. The reason that the Concorde ended up not making it outside of the crash is really it comes down to price. So a normal first class ticket from New York to London could run you anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000. It wouldn't be uncommon for a ticket from like the East Coast of the United States into Europe to be anywhere from like $7,000 to $8,000 for first class. Yeah. The Concorde typically is about 3 to 4 times more expensive. So to put that into kind of today's dollars, a one-way ticket in the 1990s would cost between $8,000 and $12,000 US dollars.
Adjusted for that would be like $40,000 today.
So adjusted for inflation, that would be $15,000 to $20,000 for a one-way ticket. So you're right. So adjusted for inflation today, if all the economics and all the inputs were the same, we're looking at a ticket on one of these carriers to be between 30 and 40 grand. Now, there are not a lot of people in the world that are going to pay 30 to 40 grand to fly on the plane. I don't care who you are or what it is, those extra 3 hours or 4 hours that you save, it's not worth $20,000.
Yeah.
Or it's not worth $20,000 for a large enough amount of people for them to make that extra purchase, if it makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And people were saying about the Concorde, they were saying it's too expensive, obviously, like we just said. It's too elitist. And people were saying it's too noisy. Is also what they were saying.
The sonic boom is an issue. Yeah.
That it created from, it was created from dramatic change of air pressure since it traveled faster than the speed of sound. But people said you could hear it from the ground. So a lot of countries banned overland travel, which was just a nightmare for them because, they could only fly over the ocean and less money to be made.
Yeah. And then you also have this green factor. So there's been a lot of pressure put on the airlines around the world for their emissions, and rightfully so. Airlines are very guilty to contributing to the greenhouse gases around the world. And these hypersonic planes on average burn about 4 times more fuel per passenger than a typical subsonic aircraft.
You want a number?
So these planes are way worse for the environment.
You want a disgusting number about the fuel?
Go for it.
The 4 engines, I'm reading this off the internet, a reliable source. The 4 engines aboard the Concorde combined burned 6,771 gallons of fuel per hour and a ton of fuel per seat per passenger. And it says they use kerosene, which seems like
Jet
a real
fuel is different,
way of doing it. But that is so insane. About a ton of fuel per seat or per passenger. That is bananas. I mean, a lot of companies today, at least, we work in group travel. A lot of companies flying their people around, like their carbon footprint matters. And so in today's day and age, I don't know how many people would be booking flights like that.
So to make a little prediction, so Boom looks like it's leading the race, but there's obviously some issues. So number one is the cost. Like how much is a ticket going to cost and what is their payback period? Number two is I don't ever like to bet on businesses where it takes multiple amount of years just to get their first product working and in market. It is so hard to build a business and have to pay hundreds, if not thousands of people and all the materials, all the research, all the engineering, everything that goes into making this business work. And anytime that you hear a business saying, oh, we're going to do something in 5 years or 6 years, in my mind, I write it to zero. It's not that it's suspicious. It's like that could be the timeline. It's just that the risk factor is so great. Yeah. I mean, so many things have to go right and there's so many things that can go wrong and these businesses are fragile. So the amount of funding that this thing needs is incredible.
And the permits alone to do something like that?
Well, the permits too, but even taking it down to like the human level, imagine working on like the Boom team and you're on the Boom team for 3 or 4 years. You're giving, you're 27 years old and you're going to give 5 years of your life to this business. And you're not even sure if like your equity is going to come true, right? You're not even going to sure if you're going to be able to cash in on this pipe dream. Yeah. And then just on a human level, like you're not even really sure that you're making progress because this thing hasn't gone in the air. And specifically about Boom, there's questions if this thing even has a working engine at this time. So right now it's a fancy website. It's, a big factory, maybe some designs, but they haven't gotten the plane in the air yet that I know of. I could definitely be wrong, but there are so many things to overcome to make this a legitimate business. And for the extra money, is it worth the tens of thousands of dollars more that you're going to pay? I mean, to some people, the answer will be yes, but is it enough people that that's going to allow them to run a big business? And I just don't think, because I think that at that level of spend, if you're going to spend 30 or 40 grand on a flight, you're probably in the same class of person where you can just fly private.
It's not really a great market for like new customers. It's not that easy to be like, hey, trust us with your life. But speaking of flying private, you want to see something freaking crazy? Check this out.
Go for it.
So this is a website called Spike Aerospace. So Spike is creating private supersonic planes, private jets. Do you see the way this thing looks?
Yeah.
It looks like it's from the Jetsons.
It looks like a cartoon too. So anytime I see something like this, it looks so suspicious. Like this looks like clip art.
I know. It says, well, here's what it says.
What is this?
It says its design is reduced the sonic boom to the sound of a car door slamming. They do that by changing the shape of the nose. So like its long and pointy nose, it helps bounce the shock wave towards space rather than the ground, it says. I'm saying it says because I just don't know, you guys. But this seems based off of what's on the internet, this seems like the first closest to reality supersonic jet I've seen. It says the wing is changed. The Delta wing was like a big famous thing on the Concorde. Yeah. It says it's changed to a crank wing to control pressure waves, which was another sound problem. It's windowless, which scares the shit out of me. That's so scary. That's so scary. And it goes 1,100 miles per hour. So it shaves off like 200 to 300 miles per hour, which is still faster than the speed of sound, but low enough to hypothetically handle the sonic boom and the crazy temperatures and the engine efficiency. But, their pitch is like, then New York to London in 3.5 hours, and it would cut passenger flight time by 50%. You're so right. Like until, you know what? Show me it in the air, have somebody go on it. It's not going to be us, and tell me if it works, because like how much money does it cost to fund something like this? What does this look like too? Are you going to add this as an option at JFK and MCO? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing that you have to look out for when evaluating how close this company is to coming to market is, do they have pre-orders from airlines, right? So they're building this plane, but they're not going to make their own airline. Like Boeing doesn't have its own airline. It sells its planes to Delta and to American. Yeah. So you have to ask yourself, is it well funded enough? And does it have pre-orders? Boom has pre-orders, but just because you have pre-orders doesn't mean that you're going to be in business. So for example, Rivian, the electric car maker, they had pre-orders from Amazon and all these, and they were backed by Ford Motor Company. And basically when this thing went public, they all pulled the rug, right? And then Rivian crashed, and now Rivian's trading for a fraction of what it was. And
so it's not good?
I mean, the car looks okay if you're into ugly pickup trucks. Yeah, it's fine. The SUV looks much better. I haven't seen the SUV live. I don't know if it's out, but any business that needs hundreds of millions of dollars to get to market is very, very high risk. And pre-orders don't necessarily mean success of the company, because we don't know what's in those commercial terms, right? Yeah. So maybe it's just like maybe it's like an LOI, or like some kind of very loose thing that makes it easy for the Amazons and the Fords to claw this back. Yeah. And they just put it out for the headline because they trick investors into putting money. So for example, our good friend OpenAI just told me that Boom, since 2021, because that's its knowledge cutoff, it's raised $241 million. So 241 million over the last 9 years, say, and this thing has still not flown in the air. That's also like, imagine working for that company, right? Too, like you're just working. It's like, hey boss, when is our plane going to fly? And he's like, well, we're looking at 2035. And it's like, dude, Like I may be dead in 2035. Like,
what are the commitments on the backside of these investments? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah,
That's
and
so
they have good firms in here too. So Japan Airlines put money in, C-Trip put money in, Bessemer, that's a pretty big fund, Emerson Collective. I mean, I think that they've also received funding from the U.S. Department of Defense and NASA. So this thing has some serious money, but money doesn't always equal commercial success. So to kind of answer the question and wrap it up, anytime that you hear a project that's going to be delivered to you in multiple years in the future, you should proceed with high caution.
Don't hold your breath.
Don't hold your breath. Yeah. Would this be cool? Yes, but there's more questions than answers at this point. So we're just going to have to be okay with flying 8 hours to Europe in the steel tube.
Steel tube. Listen, I'm cool with that. I mean, the reason the Concorde program went to shit is because, the procedures and the safety measures just it wasn't enough. And that would be the scariest thing. I just can't imagine getting from New York to London in 3 hours. It sounds like something I don't even want to do, because is it worth the risk? Yeah. Is it shaving 3 hours off your trip worth the risk? No, I don't. I mean, listen, I would love for this to be a thing, and we will totally make another episode if they come out with something that says that they're getting it in the air. But for now, we're going to say it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. If you work at this company, we're rooting for you. And I hope that you find a way to make this affordable. But if I was to place a bet, to place my money behind, backing the company, it would be a no for me.
All right. Well, to answer your question, there you go. You probably got more information than you asked for, but we hope you learned something here today. And if you have any other questions that you'd like us to talk about, topics you'd like us to cover, just email hello@travelnerds.co. You can find us everywhere at Travel Nerds Pod on TikTok, Instagram, and we'll see you next week. Later, nerds.